Please. Everybody get located. There are a few seats over here, just a very few. If you need a spot, folks back in the back, there's some over here. Let's see, and it looks like about half a dozen over here. Everybody get located. Is Bill Burr here? They want that car back this morning. You can take a joke, can't you? You know, are you driving it, or is your wife's next husband driving it this morning? Everybody get located. These seats over here, somebody sitting there? We have just a few seats right over here. We have folks standing back in the back, and I'd rather you wouldn't do that. Nobody's standing in the back. And nobody loitering in the hallway fellowshipping while classes are going on. If you're going to run for office, run for mayor or something like that. Don't politic here. Everybody. I like to start off the first morning angry, mad, a little upset. And guy can preach better when he's mad. Okay, we've got several seats over here, folks. No standing in the back, please. No standing in the back. There looks like about a half a dozen in the aisle up here. And it looks like we have a few seats up in this section up here. Get everybody situated. These empty seats bother me here. Are they saved for somebody? Some of you folks come down and sit in these seats over here. They bother me some here. We have some seats right down here. Somebody move that coat off there, would you please? A blanket or something. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody was under it. I'm sorry. That's good. I got one or two over here. So right over there. Boy, you look like you're in a daze this morning, just wandering around, wondering. Okay. Be sure we get everybody located and everybody settled. It's hard to believe this is the 34th annual pastor school. That means I was 36 years old. We had the first one. I'm 39 now. It's amazing, isn't it? The sad thing about it, you get my age, you really think you're 39. You're not kidding. You really think you are. Somebody asked me not long ago, said, now that you're 70, is your memory failing you? I said, no, I've got a better memory now than I ever had. I can remember things that didn't even happen. I'm sharp, boy. When we have crowds here that didn't even show up. All right, we welcome you this morning. Many of you are here for the first time, and well, this is sort of sissy, isn't it, up here this morning? We just wanted to make it appropriate to you. That's all. We were preaching, talking to you pussyfooters this morning, and we thought maybe this would be. Okay, let's bow our heads for prayer. Our Heavenly Father, make it a day of benefit to all of us. Bless our sessions, our pastor school, and blend us as a unit quickly, please. Help us to take down all the barriers and all the fences between us and be a unit as one, as a family for these hours and days we spend together. Bless our meeting this morning. Amen.
and a lover loves his gal.
As a daughter loves her father, as a mother loves her son, as a lover loves her sweetheart, are the loves that make us one.
For they all unite together to the woman of my life. I love her and complete her, my precious darling wife. So we blend our loves together as we form a happy team, and we live our lives together to fulfill a perfect dream. As a son doth love his mother, as a friend doth love a friend, as a boyfriend loves his sweetheart, are the loves that deftly blend.
As a sister loves a brother, as a lassie loves a friend, as a helpmate loves her husband, are the loves that deftly blend.
Yes, they all unite together for a love that cannot die. My lover and completed, my precious darling guy. So we blend our loves together as we form a happy team, and we live our lives together to fulfill a perfect dream. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. Keep the love lights burning in your eyes so true. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. Keep the love lights burning in your eyes so true. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. It shall forevermore endure, the saints and angels' song. The love of God is greater far than tongue or pen can ever tell. It goes beyond the highest star and reaches to the lowest hell. The guilty pair bow down with care. God gave his son to win the erring child. He reconciled and pardoned from his sin. Oh, love of God, how rich and pure, how the saints and angels' song. Could we with ink the ocean fill, and were the skies of parchment made, were every stalk on earth a quill, and every man a scribe by trade,
To write the love of God above would drain the ocean dry.
nor could the scroll contain the whole, though stretched from sky to sky. Oh, love of God, how rich and pure, how measureless and strong, it shall forevermore endure. The saints and angels' song. The saints and angels' song.
I want to ride old paint, going at a run. I want to feel the wind in my face. 1,000 miles from the city lights, going a cowhand's pace. I want to pillow my head, hear the sleeping herd, while the moon shines down from above. I want to strum my guitar and yodel odel-ay. Oh, that's the life that I love. I want to be a cowboy sweetheart. I want to learn to rope and ride. I want to ride o'er the plain and the desert, out west of the Great Divide. I want to hear the coyotes howling as the sun sinks in the west. I want to be a cowboy sweetheart. That's the life I love the best. Sing as you ride in the roundup of life. Sing as you
right, we're going to teach a while this morning on the subject of reaching couples. Reaching couples. I do not know how many lessons I'm going to teach on marriage. By the way, we already had 100 fellows go home to their wives after all these love songs and everything. But I want to talk to you on the subject teaching or reaching couples. Our Heavenly Father, help me to be a help. That's all I ask this morning. I want to be a help. In Jesus' name, amen. I really approach this subject with fear and trembling. One reason I do, because I don't want to say anything that would conflict with what some pastor might say, and I certainly do not want to make anyone feel this pastor's wrong. If I say anything, and I will say some things this morning that are a little bit different from some of your churches, I want you to agree with your pastor and not agree with me. Don't you go home and cause your pastor in trouble. If you go home and cause me in trouble, I'll fly down where you are, fly up where you are, and I'll stand beside him. I'll make the motion to vote you out of the church. So I want to help. Now you understand that your pastor has brought you to the pastor school. And I'm going to say some things basically to help the pastor and instruct the pastor. And it just may be, in fact there will be. There's not a pastor here that's going to agree with everything I say. And certainly not a church here that does everything I'm going to suggest you do, or there's no need for us to come here. I want to make several comments before I start. I'll teach this class lasts for 40 minutes. One, this whole week I have right here 16 pages of outlines right here in my Bible on this one subject alone. Now it's a package. After I finish the first class, you're going to wonder how much you're going to learn, because I'm going to give you some philosophy in the first class and so forth. I want you to take the whole package. Don't just come to pastor school and say, I'm going to come for a day or two. Don't do that. You stay the whole time, the whole package. If I promise you this, if you'll call home and tell them you're going to stay through Thursday night, I promise you that you'll be glad that you did. And you won't be sorry you didn't, because you won't know what you missed. But it's a whole package, and I want you to get the whole package. Now let me, a second word of caution. Let me finish the whole package before you criticize. Third thing I want to say is don't let a disagreement on one point rob you of the help you can get on all the other points. Next thing I want to say is I have practiced what I'm going to say this morning all of my ministry. This is not something that I've decided to change. This is the way the First Baptist Church of Hammond has been built. It's the way the Miller Road Baptist Church of Garland, Texas was built many years ago. And this is not something that is new to me. The philosophies I'm going to present to you are philosophies that I believe for all these many years. Now, I made this statement to my people last Wednesday night, and I think it's true. If we had a secret ballot in our church as to whether the pastor stayed or left, and we have about 4,000 to 5,000 people here on Wednesday night. This building is not as full as it is now, but it looks pretty full. And if we had a secret ballot, and the ballot simply said, I want Brother Hyles to stay, or I want Brother Hyles to leave, I would be stunned and shocked if there was one negative vote. You won't find a church more united than this church. And by the way, you won't find a church that stood with a preacher like this church has stood with this preacher either. Now, we're talking about building a strong church, and I want to help you do that. So hear me out. I'm worried, and I'm going to start off right off the bat, and I don't want to hurt anybody. I want to help everybody. But I'm a little worried that we're getting the tail wagging the dog. I'm concerned about a church running 150 in Sunday school baptizing 1,000 people. Now, I'm not against the baptizing 1,000 people, but if you don't get that 150 up, you're not going to baptize 1,000 people very long. I'm concerned about us building strong churches. Now, the purpose of building a strong church is so you can baptize more people. But if we don't, for example, I want to, when you hear about First Baptist Church of Hammond, and you hear about all the conversions and so forth, and the size we are, when you come here to visit us, I don't want you to be disappointed. I want you to see something here, and I want to have a base and a strong church that's here. Now, please do not misunderstand me. Look, I have paid my dues to the poor. Nobody knows. Nobody can say that I have not stood for the poor. I have paid my dues to the bus ministry. I have championed the bus ministry across America. Before you criticize me this morning because I'm going against the bus ministry, let me remind you that whoever you are, we had several times more on buses last Sunday than you did, and so I'm not opposed to the bus ministry. I believe in the bus ministry with all of my heart. But you know, First Baptist Church, every once in a while I'll feel like the buses need a little boost, and we'll have a spring program or a fall program that emphasizes strongly the buses. Then I'll feel like we need to have the drive-in crowd boosted a little bit. So I may have an entire fall program that'll just emphasize the drive-in crowd. Or I may have a fall program or a spring program emphasize just the reaching of adults, mainly the reaching of adults. I'm trying to keep the proper balance. Now, if you have 500 in Sunday school and 50 on buses, you're not right with God. If you have 50 drive-in and 500 on buses, you're not right with God either. I want you to keep the balance. Now, I think I've stressed it, and I've championed the causes of the poor and the underprivileged. I think that I have maybe gone over a little bit. And maybe I have need to come back now and say, let's get the home base in good shape. Let's get the drive-in crowd. So I want to make some statements this morning. I'm afraid I've unknowingly left some wrong impressions, and I'm going to parenthesize for a second. I'm afraid that in an effort to stress some things, I have left the wrong impressions. For example, my statement about the local church being the only institution that is promised divine perpetuity. I believe that. I believe the local church is the only institution in the world that's promised divine perpetuity. Now, some of you folks know what perpetuity means. It's a land up here in the brain, the perpetuated land up here. And God has said, upon this rock, Jesus said, upon this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell should not prevail against it. Now, here's what I've done. I have left the impression that I'm against everything that's not a local church, under a local church. I'm not. I simply said that God has promised the local church divine perpetuity, and I believe anything that can operate outside the local church can operate better inside the local church and under the auspices of the local church. But I'm not opposed to old rock out beside the road saying Jesus saves, even if the local church doesn't own the rock. I want to make that very plain, and I think it's my fault. I've left the wrong impression. I'm not against parachurch organizations. I'm against most of them because most of them not worth a dime. But now I worked with Dr. John Rice on the Sword of the Lord for many, many years, and it was not under a local church. I happen to have thought all the time it could operate it better under a local church than it could outside of a local church. So it's not a matter of it being wrong because it's not under a local church. Let me say it again. You won't find. I've championed the cause of the local church. I've championed the cause. I don't believe in the universal church. I don't believe in the invisible church. I think that's the interdenominational hogwash. I don't believe in it at all. But if a guy decides he wants to start going up down the street telling folks about Jesus and it's not sponsored by the local church, I'm for what the guy's doing. I think he can do it better under the auspice. I'm scared all of a sudden behind my own pulpit. I think I've left the wrong impression. I thought I was. Now also, I've left the wrong impression about my position about certain institutions with which I disagree. If I listed 10 institutions here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it may be that my line of acceptance is lower than you think it is. For example, just because a college is not my favorite college does not mean I'm against that college. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not recommending anybody to go to Bob Jones University, so don't get worried about that. But so I'll make myself very plain. I'm a Baptist, and I think that Baptist preachers ought to get trained at Baptist colleges, but I think sometimes if we are not totally for something, we're totally against something, and I may have left that wrong impression. It's a degree of acceptance and a degree of the positive. Now, let's get down to what I'm going to talk about this morning. One of my staff members came to me, a college staff member, and said, Brother Hyles, during the Revival Fires Conference, there was a preacher that criticized Hyles Anderson College. And I said, well, what was it? And he said that this preacher criticized Hyles Anderson College by making a statement that you can't build a church. You guys have your bus routes. You can't build a church like you build these bus routes. And he said that from the platform. And I said, and I agree with him. I agree with him. You can't build a church like you build a bus route. And so let me illustrate. I want to tell you a story of something that happened here when I first came. I'd been here a little less than a year, and some bus kids came to me and said, we're sick and tired of the rich people around here. And they said, we've had a meeting of all the bus kids, and either the rich people are going to go or we're going to go. Well, I didn't want to lose the rich people, and I didn't want to lose the bus kids. And so I wrestled with that thing, and I wrestled with it. And the bus kids said, you've got till Sunday. It's Thursday night right now. You got till Sunday. We're tired of these Cadillacs parked on the parking lot out here. And you got till Sunday to make your decision. I got in my car, and I drove all night long. I drove up and down the streets of Munster, Indiana. I looked at those big houses, and I said, I don't want to lose those rich people, but I don't want to lose the bus kids. All night long, I wrestled with this thing, and I heard the bus kids saying, it's us or the rich people. It's us or the rich people. If the rich people stay, we're going to leave. If we stay, the rich people have got to leave, and I wrestled. Finally, about 6 o'clock in the morning, I was over on Lake Michigan, just off at the Hilton Hotel there on the lobby, on the sidewalk. The sun was coming up on the eastern shore there. I fell on my face. A crowd of about 400 people gathered around me. And all of a sudden, I jumped up and I said, I'll take the rich people. Now, that story isn't true, but it would have been true if the bus kids had made that statement to me. I wasn't choosing the bus kids. I was choosing the people that somebody didn't want. We often use that little parable in the 14th chapter of Luke about the great supper a man built. And we say, yeah, Jesus said, go to the highways and hedges and get the poor and the lame. And he did. But let me remind you first that he sent the folks first downtown to the silk stock in the street. He did not witness to those. They didn't do it. So he said, go get the others. But he didn't say, go first. He said, what he's saying is get everybody. So we need to rethink a few things. You're already mad at me, aren't you? And now I feel like everybody's against me. But I'm like the fellow who lived on the... don't take pictures now while I'm teaching here. I'll pose for you with my shirt off in the alley after it's over. But I'm like a guy that lived on the border of the North and the South in the Civil War. Didn't know who to fight for, so he decided to put on a gray top and a blue bottom. And the North shot him in the top, and the South shot him in the bottom. And that's the way I feel this morning. I feel like I'm going to get shot from both sides. But really, if anybody ever wanted to help you, I want to help you this morning. Several statements. Number one, you don't build a church on the bus ministry. You build the bus ministry on the church. I recommend to our young men at Hyles Anderson College, they go out to start a church, they don't start a bus ministry right away. You get you a good solid base there of 100 to 150 people before you start a bus ministry. and recommend that. Now, by the way, this is not something new. I believe this all through these many long years. Bus ministries do not build churches. Strong churches build bus ministries. You don't build a church on the Spanish ministry. You build a Spanish ministry on the church. You don't build a church on the servicemen's ministry. You build the servicemen's ministry on the church. You don't build a church on the truck driver's ministry. You build a truck driver's ministry on the church. You don't build a church on the street people or rescue mission ministry. You build the street people or rescue mission ministry on the church. You don't build a church on the educable slow or the deaf or the senior citizen rest homes and Christian schools or youth ministers or jails. You don't build churches on those. The first thing you do is you build yourself a strong, solid, middle-class, drive-in crowd of tithing people, and then they finance all these other ministries. But one of these days, your superstructure is going to crumble if you don't have that foundation. Statement number 2, and I've already implied it, you build a church on middle-class adults. First Baptist Church of Hammond is a cross-section of society. But this church, I was preaching not long ago at a place, and I felt like I got up. It was at a convention, and the man that was in charge of introducing speakers didn't even know me. He had heard about me. And he got up and he said, "This is Hyles. He has a big church, but they're all a bunch of poor bus kids." And I said, "Yes." I got up and I said, "Yes, you're right. All a bunch of bus kids, but not poor bus kids, because they gave $88,000 in undesignated offering last Sunday morning." Now, the $88,000 didn't come from bus kids. But you don't get to $88,000. You don't spend $1 million a year on bus kids. And you're going to have to you're going to have to build that growth on solid foundation of middle-class drive-in people. We have fellows, I said to our students, Hyles University College, we got some young men here. If you went out and knocked on a door of a $100,000 house, you couldn't win them to Christ. You wouldn't know what to do. If they weren't poor bus kids begging for something to eat, you wouldn't know how to win them to Christ. But I want to say it again. A strong bus ministry will not, all across America, I see churches that have stopped the bus ministry. You know why they stopped the bus ministry? Because they're going under financially. You know why they're going under financially? Because they put the bus ministry as the foundation rather than the superstructure. So the bus ministry that's the first thing that suffers. First thing you cut out is the bus. You got to pay your light bill. You got to pay your indebtedness payment. You got to pay the salaries, and you got to take care of the basic things. But you don't have to send the buses. And churches say, "Well, we're down a little bit right now because we had to drop 6 of our buses." Now, the reason you dropped 6 of your buses is you didn't get a strong enough foundation to keep those 6 buses rolling. And you better listen to me. You better go back home and spend a lot of your time knocking on doors of middle-class people, reaching middle-class people so they can finance the bus ministry. And this is not speaking against the bus ministry. It's speaking for the bus ministry and for its perpetuation, which is completely dependent upon your getting middle-class people in your church to finance all these other ministries. Statement number 3. I said the first statement was you don't build a church on the bus ministry, you build a bus ministry on the church. I said secondly, you build a church on middle-class adults. And thirdly, to do this, you reach young adults. Young adults. Your big thrust in your church ought to be reaching young adults. Number 4, the teens and children are not the church of tomorrow in your church. Every once in a while I hear somebody stand up and say, "Boy, thank God for our young people. They're this church of tomorrow." No, they're not. You check with the adults in your church and see how many of them grew up in your church. Most of those teenagers are not going to be adults in your church. Your church is built by constant replenishment. Are you too cool this morning? You about too cool? Turn me, Randy, about 1 degree warmer. I see some ladies that are covering up their bikinis. Take that off the tape, please, people. young adults are the church of tomorrow. Now, what you're doing is this. You're training those young people, but you're training those young people for America. Most of them are not going to be in your church when they get married. So you've got to constantly be enlisting young adults, and we'll say an awful lot about this week. Statement number 5, I call this tool making. Tool making. The middle class adults, and of course to have them regularly, you got to have young adults. The middle class, and you say, well, why young adults? Young adults are easier to reach than middle-aged adults are. So the young adults become the tools by which you build the church. The car that we told Brother Burr it was his last night is even now being towed back to the dealership. That car would not be there if there hadn't have been a tool and die company somewhere. Some place has to make the tools. Some place has to make the dies. And in a church, you got to have the tools. And the tools of reaching multitudes of people, you call those young adults. Next statement. Once you get the tools, now this is where we're going to part company here for a few minutes. Once you get the tools, use them. Most churches are filled with unused tools. Now that's not our crowd, that's the other crowd. Our churches are emptied with tools that are kicked out because they're not finished tools yet. That's why we're going to break company here. But most churches are filled with tools that are not being used. They sit there on the pew and they're not being used. Next statement. However, it takes a while to build a tool. You don't get a piece of iron and all of a sudden say, be thou a tool. You don't get a person saved and say, be thou a soul winner. Be thou a bus worker. It takes a while to build these tools. So number 8, and here we're going to part company, don't throw the tools away while they're in making. Idiot. Stupid. Don't throw the tools away while they're in making. Don't make it soul winning or nothing. Look, non-soul winners' tithe checks will cash just like soul winners' checks will cash. In fact, I found they cash a little better than the soul winners' checks do. So what you do is you say, if you're not a soul winner, get out of here. Would you tell them to come over here? We'll make them soul winners, and while we're making their soul winners, we'll cash your checks. It should not, a tool that's not yet a soul winner should not be embarrassed in the church services. A tool that's being in making that's not yet in the bus ministry should not feel like a second-class citizen yet. I have some tools at First Baptist Church it took me a year to make. I have some tools at First Baptist Church it took me 10 years to make. Now some of you guys have chased them off within 10 days. But not me. I'm trying to make tools out of them. Next statement is, anybody still love me? I'm glad you do, because I hate you, I tell you for sure. Next statement I want to make, number 9 I have here. While they are in the making, use them as they can and will be used. I have some people that come to church on Sunday morning, come back on Sunday night, come back on Wednesday night, tithe, and they win souls to Christ, work in the bus ministry or some other ministry. And by the way, I want to say this too. A person that's a soul winner that's not in the bus ministry might be worth keeping. In many of our churches, being a bus worker is the symbol of being right with God. Did you know if a person has a walk-in ministry and wins folks that walk to church, that might be pretty good too? or maybe a bicycle ministry, or a ice skate ministry, or something. Look, I paid my due. Don't any of you rascals say, hey, he's fighting the bus ministry. You got a hole in your head big enough to drive Bill Burr's car through, and almost big enough to drive Bill Burr through. On the other hand, I have some folks in my church come to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and tithe, but they're not soul winners yet. On the other hand, I have some folks come to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, don't come to church on Wednesday night. On the other hand, I have some folks come to church on Sunday morning and tithe and don't come to church Sunday night or Wednesday night, or don't work on the bus ministry. They're not soul winners. On the other hand, I have some folks just come to church on Sunday morning and tithe. On the other hand, I have some folks just come to church on Sunday morning. Now here's my statement that's going to cause you to go home after this session. None of these should be second-class citizens. They're tools in the making. And just because they're not tools yet, do you know most of the people that come back on Sunday night didn't used to come on Sunday night? Most of the people that here at First Baptist that come on Wednesday night didn't used to come on Wednesday night. And your church, they'd be gone because you chased them off because they don't come on Wednesday night. Don't misunderstand me. I stand here and preach. Everybody ought to be, every time, I say this often, every time those hinges on those doors squeak, you ought to walk through those doors. But I want you to know that the people that don't walk through those doors on Wednesday night are not second-class citizens. They're tools in the making, and they should not be unloved, and they should not be unfed. If I find anything in the Scripture, I find that you're supposed to lift up the one that's fallen, not send him to the next ditch. It says it's supposed to bind up those that are broken and heal those that are sick. I'm a little worried, and I haven't been to your churches, but I am worried a little bit that we have the idea that if you're not in everything, you ought to feel like you're a second-class citizen. These people are prospective tools, and they may be small but still usable tools, and they're tools in the making. Number 10, they must be used as much as possible. Get all from each person that you can get. Number 3, I've implied this already, do not be all or nothing. If a fellow doesn't tithe, but he makes $10,000 a month, if he just give $100 a month, that's not tithe the $10,000, but $100 is sure better than the other church getting $100. So write your check. You say, are you being bought off? Get my tapes and see if I'm being bought off. I know I'm not being bought off. I just believe that everybody in a church who attends the church ought to be treated with dignity and love and kindness and tenderness. You know, I feel like a pussyfooter. It doesn't feel bad at all. If I'd known it felt this good to pussyfoot, I'd done it years ago. I have realized it right now how John MacArthur really feels. It's great. Then, and I've said this before, do not drive them away, but maintain them. Now, this is not new stuff to most of you. Any organization that's going to be a success has got to have 2 departments, production and maintenance. Ms. Hyles, every 2 years I buy her a car. Start off with a small car, and then every 2 years I buy her a nicer car. And several years ago I bought her an Oldsmobile, and the salesman was nice and good. We got a good price on it, and everything was fine. Took it back to get it serviced, and on the way home she pushed it on the brake and the radio came on. She pushed the brake again, the radio turned off. Every time she pushed the brake, if the radio was off, it would turn on, and if it was on, it was turned off. We didn't buy another car there. You call that a fundamental Baptist service department. Smile at me, I'm scared. You call that an independent fundamental Baptist maintenance department. Now, listen to me carefully. You may produce a lot of people, but if you don't have a maintenance department, you're not going to keep a lot of people. And you don't keep a lot of people, you don't have the tools it's going to take to build a great church. This church is built on solid couples and families that drive their that drive their Chevrolets and Plymouths and Chryslers and park in the parking lot out there and bring their families to our Sunday school and sit in these pews and sing in the choir and serve on the deacon board and ushers in the church and teach Sunday school classes. Those are our tools. And ladies and gentlemen, in our ministries, it's time we got back to realizing we've got to have a tool-making company or we're going to fall flat on our face as far as the big production is concerned. So maintain your people. I say we ought to out-teach the teacher type. Folks that come to your church ought to get more Bible doctrine than Moody Institute gives them. You ought to out-teach the teacher type. I promise you, if you've been here Sunday morning in my Sunday school class, you'd learn something. You ought to out-teach the teacher type. We ought to out-comfort the comforting type. We ought to out-positive the positive thinkers. We ought to out-love the loving, out-wise and outwit the wise, out-feed the deeper lifers. We ought to out-pastor the pastoral types. I'm trying to say that we ought to maintain and feed and pastor our people. I'm talking about hospital calls. I'm talking about caring for the sick and the shut-ins. I'm talking about the rest homes. I'm talking about your funerals. Your funerals should not be the latest evangelistic crusade. Did you know, fundamental independent Baptist preacher, did you know that if you don't preach on hell at a funeral, it's not pussyfooting? The most comforting funeral service in your town ought to be at the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church. The most beautiful wedding conducted in your town ought not to be at First Lutheran Church. It ought to be at King James Bible Baptist Church. You call this servicing the tools, servicing your people. You know what I'd do if I were you? I'd get my Wednesday night tapes, and I'm not trying to make any money. If I were you, I'd get the Wednesday night tapes I just taught on marriage. 22, I think, of them. I'd get those tapes, and I'd study it, and I would teach those things tape for tape and lesson for lesson and work on the marriages of my people if I were you. I'd get my tapes on justice. I'd teach them. And by the way, you don't have to tell anybody where you got it. Just tell them how smart you are. And I'm not trying to say, but I'm trying to tell you this. You need to feed your people. I said you need to feed your people. Meet their needs. Without them, you will not build a lasting church. Do not build a flash-in-the-pan church. These are they who finance the other ministries. And you say, well, Jesus said, go get the poor. Let me remind you something, Buster and Busterettes. He said get the poor, but if you'll check your New Testament, in case you have one, if you'll check it very carefully, you'll find what Jesus did was he took 12 middle-class people. One was a former tax collector. Two had operated a business. He took 12 middle-class people and spent 3 years training them and ministering to them and preparing them to be his tools. And you better go home, and you better realize that you are, by the way, you devoted Peter out of the church when he cursed and denied the Lord, the faith, and the church. You just said, hey, good, bad, rubbish is good riddance. Just get your little self and trot your little carcass out of here. They're going to vote your carcass out too. Now look, Sunday night I preached here, all these microphones here. When I got through, I kicked them all over. There was not a microphone standing, and I feel sorry if you'll push a foot in one microphone, preachers. And I preach as hard as you do, but before you copy my Sunday night sermon, you might better get my Sunday morning sermon and listen to it. When I made love to my people for about 30 minutes up here behind this platform. There's not a person in the First Baptist Church of Hammond, Indiana that doesn't know that Brother Hyles loves them. Not a one. And they also know that if they don't agree with me, it's not agree or get out. They know that I love them, and I want to use them as much as I can as a tool. They're tools and training, if you please. I preached in the great churches of America of the past generation. I preached in the First Baptist Church of Fort Worth, where J. Frank Norris was pastor for years. I'm an old man. I preached in Moody Church in Chicago. I preached at Jarvis Street Baptist Church in Toronto, where Dr. T.T. Shields was the famous pastor. I preached in Dr. Oswald Smith's People's Church in Toronto, Canada. I preached for Dr. G.B. Vick in the Temple Baptist Church in Detroit. I noticed something, all of these churches, let me tell you what happened to them. When I preached there, it was in the last part of the man's ministry or after the main man had left. They had one thing in common. Looked like a snowstorm had dropped on the heads of all the people. They were a bunch of gray-beard people who, when they were young, had built that church. And now then, they did not get young couples to replenish them. And the churches, they're good people. They're tithing people. They know the Bible. And they're praying people, but there are no young people, young couples coming up. You heard me say this. Don't break the tools while building them, and you've heard this many times. But for you new people, I'll say it. We have 4 types of people sitting in these pews every Sunday morning. Number one, the people that agree with everything I say because I say it. If Brother Hyles says it, it's true. Now these are the most intelligent people that we have in our church. But there's a second group of people in First Baptist Church of Hammond, and that's the group of people that believe what I say because they already believed it and they found me. They came to our church and they said, wow, I didn't know anybody preached like that anymore. That's what I used to hear. And they agree because they already agreed before they came. Third group of people that weigh what I say and decide whether to agree or not. They listen to me and decide whether they believe it or not. Fourth group of people don't believe a thing I say but love to hear me say it. They don't like what I say, but they love to see microphones flying around here all the time while I'm preaching. I'll make it very plain. And if this crucifies me, get your hammer and nails out. I'll gladly die on your cross. But did you know the word love is still in the Bible? Anybody ever tell you that Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you're my disciples because you love one another? Ever dawn on you about that? I'm giving you some new doctrine now. I was down years ago. There used to be a store down here called Joe Hirsch Men's Store. One day, Dr. G.B. Vick came by to see me, and he was still pastoring Temple Baptist Detroit. I took him down to buy him a suit. We walked in the store there. It had just an entrance, only one entrance, small private men's store. I was going to buy him a suit. We walked in, and there stood right in the front of me one of our members from group number 4. Group number 4 doesn't agree with the thing I preach, but they love to hear me preach it. She had on a tight pair of pants. Either that, or either she had on a tight pair of black pants, or she'd painted herself black from her waist down. I'm not sure. And if pants were okay, they wouldn't be okay for her. And they're not okay, in case you'd like to know. She looked at me, and there she was. She tried to find the door. There's no door to escape. Only way out was the door I was standing in. I don't know what she said, but it seemed like she said, "Even so come, Lord Jesus." I think that's what she said. And I walked over to her. And I said, no, I'll call her Mrs. Jones. That was not her name. I remember her name. I said, "Mrs. Jones, I'm so glad to see you. I want you to meet one of my heroes, Dr. G.B. Vick. And Brother Vick, I want you to meet one of my fine members. This is Miss Jones. Miss Jones and her husband have been in our church for several years, and I love them with all my heart. And I'm so proud to introduce to you Mrs. Jones, one of the members of my church." She was stunned. And I said, "Miss Jones, I'm so glad you got to meet Brother Vick. And Brother Vick, I'm so glad you got to meet Mrs. Jones." A few days later, I got a letter. "Dear Brother Hyles, you may remember that you saw me in Joe Hurst's store last week." I did remember. In fact, those pants are ever before me. And she's the kind that you'd have had no evil thoughts if you'd have seen her. Just like some of you gals. But she said, "I've never felt so loved in my life." She said, "I know I embarrassed you. I know you felt bad about it." She said, I can't believe you treated me like you treated me. You made me feel like a queen." By the way, Ms. Jones gave up her pants a few weeks later. And she moved up a notch as far as the class is concerned. She got promoted from class number 4 to class number 3. Now, I know what you've done. "Well, you go get some decent clothes on, get your skirt on. I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Vick." And you get voted out because you're courageous. You think that you get voted out because you're an idiot. That's what you get voted out for. Next statement, make the tools and tools in making feel more important than anyone else in the church. Now, I hate to even say what I'm going to say right now, because I'm not against what you guys are doing, but we don't do it here. Here at First Baptist Church, the tools get more attention than the others do. Here at First Baptist, for example, we have built an adult-flavored church. Children don't wave their Bibles at First Baptist Church of Hammond. Children don't stand up and holler, "Well, glory," or preach it. They sit and listen at First Baptist Church of Hammond. Folks that wave their Bibles are adults at First Baptist Church of Hammond. Now, I don't understand me. If your pastor doesn't do it, so he's right and I'm wrong. But I'm telling you how we do it here, and how I've done it for 51 years of preaching the gospel and half a century of pastoring. We want the children to sit and listen. And it's an adult-flavored church. If you were here last Sunday night, and you'd have seen a bunch of people jump up and wave their Bible, "Well, glory, preach it!" Some of them have white hair. Some have no hair. And now, I'm not saying that what you're doing is wrong. I'm telling you what we do here at First Baptist Church. This church is an adult-flavored, drive-in flavored church. We're trying to make tools so we can reach every poor person we can. And before you crucify me on your altar of pharisaical phylacteries, let me put my poor people beside yours. Over 100 people off the streets of Chicago that slept on the sidewalks last night sat right up here last Sunday morning. I imagine 12, 13,000 people or more rode buses to First Baptist Church Hammond last Sunday morning. We had 7 truck drivers saved last Sunday morning, 22 sailors saved last Sunday morning. But you hear me carefully. We wouldn't have had those street people. We wouldn't have had those truck drivers. And we wouldn't have had those sailors. And we wouldn't have had those bus kids if this church were not built solidly around the drive-in adult middle-class people. I'm not saying only get them. I'm saying don't neglect them. Don't drive past a middle-class house to get to the slums. Go to the slums and stop on the middle-class house on the way. It's been nice knowing you. We'll all meet in this section over here this afternoon after it's all over. Now, don't you criticize somebody. You go, boy, I'm glad he got him. I'll nail your hide before the week's out too, Pharisee. I'm not trying to get anybody. I'm not trying to nail anybody's hide to the wall. I'm just trying to help the people that I love with all of my heart. I'm the only old man pastoring in our movement, just about. I mean, this church is the only church of 1,000 people or more that I know of that's pastored by a man that's 70 years of age or older. Literally hundreds of you are my preacher boys, and I love you with all my heart. I want to look down from heaven one of these days, and I want to see a church flourishing 20 years from now. If it flourishes 20 years from now, you got to build some tools, or you can't build the product. And we'll continue talking about this a bit later. ladies here at the front, hand me one of the books, would you please? Just hand me one of the books. May I have your attention, please? Be seated, please. May I have your attention? Go ahead, look, girls, if you haven't passed out all the little ballpoint pens. Please do not mistake what I just taught for departing from our subject of marriage. I'm talking about reaching married people, married couples. About a year ago, I called two people to my office. I called Mrs. Colston, who's my proofreader, and I called Mrs. Bordaway, who's my typist. And I said, I'm going to share a secret with you, and if you ever betray me, I'll kill you both and tell God you died of an accidental death. I said, this must not be told to your husband, nobody. I want 3 people, only 3, to know this till October 24th. I said, I am writing a book about my wife. I want you, Miss Colston, to proof it. Mrs. Bordway, I want you to type it. And I want to give it to her as a surprise on our 51st wedding anniversary. I spent several months, my spare time, writing a book. It's called Her Husband Praiseth Her. On our 51st anniversary, we drove out to a little lake, a park, and overlooking a lake, and we sat there in the car on our 51st anniversary, and then we really got with it. And I said, I have an anniversary present to give you, and I gave her a gift wrap box, and she opened it, and she saw this. I've never seen her so stunned in my life. She had not one idea. It's called Her Husband Praiseth Her. Now, the book is to tell you how tough she's been through all these years. I take you back to the little country church we started off in. I tell you how about the little places we lived and everything, how tough she's been, how she killed a rattlesnake in the front yard one day, and because I was running from it. And but it's called Her Husband Praiseth Her. And the chapters are Meet Beverly Hyles, tough, married to a queen. For example, it says right here, for 51 years I've been married to a queen. She has reigned in many palaces. Her palace has been little rooms, 6x12, with a kitchen in which Her Majesty shared with 8 other couples, and 2 bathrooms which were shared with 8 other couples. Her palace has been 1 bedroom with no kitchen facilities at all. Her palace has been a 2-room apartment with no heating but a wood stove, no cook stove but one that burned kerosene, no sink, no lavatory, just 2 rooms. Her palace has been a little country parsonage so rickety that 2 people could not get in the back bedroom at the same time for fear the floor would fall through. Her palace has been cottages, apartments, and rental rooms. For 37 years, her palace has been a nice house in Munster, Indiana. Regardless of the size or attractiveness of the palace, Her Highness has ruled with dignity, pomp, and propriety. Her scepter at times has been a spatula or a stirring spoon or a paring knife, which she has wielded with all the dignity of royalty. Her throne at times has been a kitchen chair as she ruled at the table. At other times she ruled her kingdom of a bedroom chair. At times that chair was a psychiatric couch where she dealt with her subjects. At times it was a pulpit from which she spoke to them. At times it was a judge's bench where she administered justice. But Her Majesty always wore the same crown of honor and dignity and propriety. Her subjects were her children, her Sunday school class, citizens of rest homes, some homesick college girls, some college wives to whom she ministered in their loneliness while their husbands were going to college while working full-time jobs. This queen ruled only in the absence of the king. He was gone much of the time with his responsibilities, and she was required to assume the command of the kingdom more than she really wanted. That's just a little bit of it. And we're going to give it to each one of the delegates, lady delegates who are here this morning as a gift. So would you stand, please? If you're a lady registered delegate, would you stand, and our lovely young ladies will give you a free copy of the book. ladies, if you'll help each other now. We have any? Do we need over here? Anybody need one? How about over here? Over here? Right up here. They're still passing them out. Right here on the front, we have a few on the front. Some of you young ladies that have some, come over here and help these over here on the front. Might be wise if some young ladies downstairs, 3 or 4 of you went upstairs over here and helped them. Right? You have any more books? What young lady has some more books? Would you raise your hand, please? You have some more? Okay, go upstairs up here. We take them upstairs up here. We're not. You won't be able to leave with all the pomp you were going to leave with, but take some upstairs. And this is okay over here. We have one lady right here that needs one. One lady right over here needs one. Good. As soon as you do that, you can go back to your positions, please. By the way, I sent a free copy of that book to every pastor on our mailing list, to every pastor in the Southwide Baptist Fellowship, and to every pastor in the Baptist Bible Fellowship. Thousands of free copies. 3 letters I've gotten, and I'm going to cry right now. 3 letters I've gotten from missionaries who said my wife was leaving me and going home because she would not be a missionary's wife. She read the book and she's staying on the field. 3. 7 pastors' wives read it and divorced their husbands. Be sure you get the balance of this thing. Somebody said, Brother Hyles, if you just go after folks that are bus people and street people, God will send you rich people. Anybody? How many of you fellows here you've gone after bus people and street people, and God sent you a millionaire? Would you raise your hand, please? I see. You dig millionaires out like you dig bus people out. You go after them. But you go after everybody. That's all I'm trying to say. Go after everybody. And I keep trying to get myself out of trouble here, but I don't think it's going to work. I don't give a flip. I tell my people, if you don't like what I say, let me know. I'm on Social Security. My wife's on Social Security. We'll get us Bermuda shorts and go to Florida and play shuffleboard the rest of our lives. Before I go, I sure would like to help you fellas. And I mean it with all my heart when I say I know my days are numbered. Most of you guys are young guys. And I want you to be in the tool making business. Brother Jeff Owens, would you come please? Brother Jeff's going to teach us now. One of the finest young men I know. and one of the best balanced young men I know. And he's going to teach you this morning on how of the starting of a couples class. This is so vital. Brother Jeff Owen started a class how many years ago? 7 years ago. He had 200 and how many Sunday? 235 last Sunday. Now, I'm not very smart, but 235 couples usually means 235 children. And 235 and 235, I don't know how much it is, but it's a lot. And you can build a pretty good sized church with 470 people. And you can, so listen carefully. Here's one of the finest young men that we have that I know, one of the hardest working young men, and he's going to talk to you about starting a couples class with Jeff Owen.
All right. Thank you for coming. I'm going to talk to you a little about something that Brother Hyles talked with me about years ago when I started my couples class. He told us if we're going to keep our church strong, if we're going to keep it growing, there's some things we're going to have to do. We're going to have to replace our old families with some new families. Of course, we lose some people to the world, and we've got to make sure we keep replacing them with young couples. He said the average church member, and I use the word average there, the average church member lasts about 7 years. Some phase out, they leave the scene. Therefore, we start a young married couples class here at First Baptist Church about every 5 to 7 years. That helps to replenish those young couples in the church. We recently started our 6th class. I started a class 7 years ago. I'll be talking to you a lot today about what I did when I started my class and what we've accomplished with our class. Now, this young couples class adds a whole new dimension to the church. Now, don't be convinced to have just an auditorium class. I've known of pastors that went to churches and the pastor himself started a couples class. For instance, Brother Hyles' auditorium class that he has here every Sunday morning originally was a couples class that he started when he came here to First Baptist Church. Brother Colston teaches what was at one time a couples class. Of course, they've aged a lot, but it was a couples class. Brother Moffat teaches what was a couples class. Brother Lapina's class is a couples class. The class I currently teach and started 7 years ago is a couples class. Just a few months ago now, we started a new couples class. It's being taught by one of the fine men here in our church, Dave Douglas. Now, the Hyles says the people that built the church, in some cases, are no longer building like they used to. Now, the old people still come. They still tithe. Of course, they should be allowed to come. They're not always as aggressive. He said sometimes they begin to feel like they've paid their dues, but they're still good people. They're still a part of our church, but we've got this new group that we've reached. They're excited. Some people say, well, I'm at my church and the honeymoon is over. Here, we're always on a honeymoon because there's always this new group of excited people that Brother Hyles has to help him with the church. So you say, well, what are the benefits of this young married couples class? Well, obviously, we're going to see people saved because of it. Now, let me say something. I'll repeat it later on. When we talk about starting a couples class, we're talking about going out and finding brand new couples for the church. Not transferring people around in the church, but we go out and we find green timber out there, and we win them and we bring them in. That's where we get these couples. So we're going to see people saved. Well, what are the benefits? Of course, the family is going to be strengthened. The homes are going to be strengthened. Marriages are going to be salvaged when reaching these young couples. My very first Sunday of the Sweetheart Couples class, that's the name of my class, my very first Sunday, I remember when Brother Hyles talked to me about starting this class, he said, Jeff, how'd you like to teach an adult Sunday school class? I said, Preacher, that would be great. He said, the problem is you don't have any adults. I knew there had to be a catch somewhere. He said, I do have this empty room for you, and I've got some empty chairs. It's your job to go out in the world and win them and bring them in. I want brand new people. Now, I'm not a real impressive person, and I'm sure this won't impress you very much, but the opening day, we had 18 people. 9 new families in that young Sunday school class. Now, let me tell you what's happened in the last 7 years. Brother Hyles is so wise. As he was explaining this to me as a young man, it didn't all make sense, but I just did what he said, and everything turned out great. More fantastic than what I would have ever dreamed. He told me to start the class, start it with new people. We did. We started with 18. Now, as he said, just last Sunday, we had 235 people in my couples class. That's 118 couples. Now, I'm not talking about children. There weren't children in there. I'm not talking about people that are in their 50s and 60s, not even in their 40s. I'll talk to you about the ages a little later on. I'm talking about 118 young couples that have families. Now, I'm not trying to necessarily build a Sunday school class. I'm trying to build lives. Those lives, once we reach them, can be used to serve the Lord here in the church. To be honest, I don't win these couples and try to get them in my class to keep them in my class. I win them to the Lord so that when Brother Hyles needs them in the church and the Lord needs them to help us to run the church, they'll be available. So these are very capable people. I was in a staff meeting one day and Brother Hyles said, I need us to find some Sunday school teachers to help in the other departments and things. I left that staff meeting that day, went to my office, wrote down 15 names quickly, took them back to him, and I said, Preacher, here are 15 people from my adult Sunday school class I think are ready. He turned around, he recruited them, we distributed them throughout the other Sunday schools. You see, I kind of feel like this. I feel like when my class attendance goes down because my people are moving up, I'm doing my job. They were recruited out of my class and they have been distributed again throughout the church. Now, let me show you a little bit of what's occurred in the last 7 years. I quickly wrote some numbers down. For instance, right now I have 21 people that are no longer attending my adult Sunday school class. They're not included in that 235, 236 number I gave you earlier. 21 of them are teaching somewhere else on Sunday morning. Little boys' classes, little girls' classes, teenage classes. 2 of them are departmental superintendents. In other words, they oversee many classes. I have 11 deacons that came from our Sunday school class. I have 71 bus workers that came from my Sunday school class, 9 bus captains. Some are employees at First Baptist Church in our ministries now. Many are headed toward full-time service. You see, for my class attendance just to remain the same, I've got to replace the people that have been distributed in the church. And then the world gets a few, and I've got to replace those. Just to stay the same, I've got to work. But to grow, we put double time in. But when it grows, we're growing the whole church, not just my Sunday school class. See, the people in the class are new converts. When the men join my class, they have long hair. When the ladies join my class, they're wearing breeches. Had you come to my class last week, I had 6 new families that were in our class. You could have picked them out. I'm sure the ladies, when they got to class, they were a little bit shocked because a lot of my people have been taught how to live now. But we had 6 brand new families last time. I mean, people have never been to First Baptist Church before last week. When they come to class, they're fresh off the streets. They live in the communities around here, and they're all from middle-class neighborhoods. Now, when they join my class, they don't all shout amen real loud. Matter of fact, you scare them to death sometimes when there is a shouter around. It's all new to them. But in my class, they feel somewhat comfortable because that's where everybody came from. Everybody started there. Preacher told me this when I started the class. He said, Jeff, if you do your job right, you're going to have a pretty worldly class. At first, I thought, oh, that's not what I want. I don't want a worldly class. I want them all cleaned up. But praise the Lord, I've got a worldly class. Oh, we clean them up a little bit at a time, but that's where we started. Had you come to my class the first week, you would have said, look at them. They don't know nothing about the Lord. Exactly. That's what it's all about. That's what I was supposed to be doing, finding the ones that didn't know anything about it. Now, again, they don't wave their Bibles a lot. In this Sunday school class, I teach the very same lessons that the rest of the church is teaching. Now, I have gone and taught something that seemed so simple and so obvious to me I was almost embarrassed. But the people in my class said, boy, I didn't know that. I'm so glad you taught me that. I'm not there to try to impress them with my Bible knowledge, which I couldn't do anyway. But I'm there to let the Holy Spirit impress upon them Bible principles so they can learn to live and live right. Now, In almost every class, I include a little bit about the teaching on marriage and children and finances. We taught all the way through the Bible. The whole church did. We started in Genesis and went all the way through the book of Revelation. I taught every book of the Bible to the class, and in it we taught them some facts about the Bible, but Bible principles for their family, Bible principles about the rearing of their children and how to be successful here in the church. We taught the story behind the Psalms in our class, and just a series, and in it I helped to teach them about right kinds of music. You see, it's almost like an adult youth group, brand new group of kids, and we're trying to nurture them in the church. I've even learned something. With this new group of people, I have to be careful calling on a man to pray aloud in class. Most of them have never done it before. I embarrassed a few men, and finally I started going to them and saying, look, Doc, I'd like to call on you this morning to pray for the offering. I don't want to embarrass you. I just want you to get ready for it. And the men appreciate it. They're new. They don't know everything that's going on in the church. They're brand new. Many of them have never been to a church. That's an independent fundamental Baptist church. They've been to some other things out there, but they're not churches. And so, now you say, what did you do in the starting of this class? Let me tell you some things that we did when we started this class. First of all, we announced it to the congregation 4 weeks in advance to the starting of the class. Now the number of weeks is a little irrelevant here, but we announced it to the congregation. We already had a meeting place picked out for them to meet. We started telling our people where we were going to meet and that we are starting this class. And boy, your congregation could get excited about this. Again, it gives them a chance to put some tools into the church. We gave the class a name. I'll talk to you about some names in just a few minutes. We give some qualifications. Now, we explain to our congregation that we're not trying to shift people from one class to this new class, but that it is for new people. That's the purpose of the class. So, we've announced to the congregation 4 weeks in advance. We've given the class a name. We've told them where the class is going to meet. We've taught them a little bit about the qualifications. We've explained all this to them because there's somebody out there that our congregation knows that's a young couple, and we want to reach those and bring them into the church. And of course, if we've got a whole church full of people, we've got a pretty good workforce. They could help us put new people into this class. Now, let me give you the qualifications that I started with in my Sweetheart Couples class. Number one, they must be married. Now, I say that because I did not allow engaged couples to come to my class. Not that that would be wrong or bad. It's just that I'm dealing uniquely with married people, and there's sometimes I deal with some things about marriage that an engaged couple shouldn't be hearing. And when I've got all married people in my adult Sunday school class, there have been a few times that the material might have been a little sensitive for somebody that was engaged. And so we deal with those things, and from time to time, I'm glad I've got just that unit of people. But not only am I saying it because no engaged people, but I'm saying it because I don't allow people to come to my married couples class that are living together. I don't put my stamp of approval on people shacking up like alley cats. Now, there's a separation there, and I make it clear, not in an offensive way. And I'll show you how I figure out who is and who is not married. There are some times when they'll write down the same last name. It's because they're embarrassed not to write separate last names. But I'll show you how we weed through that in a little while. Now, something else I want you to know. This wasn't intended for our college students. Some people say, well, you put college students in that class. Now, that wasn't the purpose of this class. And then they were not to be transferring from other classes. That wasn't the purpose. We've told the people this isn't a time of relocation. We want brand new people to start the class. Now remember, if you put these brand new fresh people in this Sunday school class, and then maybe you put a wild college student like we might have right beside him, that college student's going to scare this person to death. All the shouting and yelling and screaming. I want this guy to get regulated in the church. I want him to grow in the church. Now, so first of all, I said they're to be married. Secondly, we used an age grouping. We started with people between the ages of 18 and 25. 18 and 25, these are the numbers that Brother Hyles gave me. So, if either member of the couple is age 18 through 25, they qualify, which means this. If I have a young lady who is 23 years old and her husband is 93 years old, smart man, they would qualify for this class. So if either in the couple are within this age bracket. Now, I'll tell you why we put the bottom number 18 there. I just didn't want to advertise to people that they ought to be being married any earlier than that. But if I had a 17-year-old gal that for some reason she ended up getting married to a 27-year-old man, I would allow them into my class. And so that bottom number was there because I didn't want anybody in the community to think that we would be looking for people under the age of 18. We're hoping they'll grow up a little more before they get married. Now, we stay within our age group. We started within that age group. Now, here's something that I want you to make sure you know. When every year at the anniversary date of the starting of my class, we added 1 year to the top number. At the end of the first year, instead of the top age being 25, the top age was 26. That way the class all grows up together. They're growing old together. We don't shift them out of the class just because they're no longer 25. But once you qualify for the class, you always qualify for the class as long as you're married. We just move that number up each year. For instance, my class is 7 years old. The age was 32 years old. We've started a new class, and what we have done now is we took the top number off of my class because we have that new group that's starting at 18 to 25, and they'll start growing old together. Now, the reason we stay within that age bracket is these young couples have a lot in common. Number one, they're new in the church. But secondly, not only are they new in the church, but these are young married people. There's some direction that's specific and needful for a young married couple, and we're able to give them that direction. Hey, they're having babies for the first time. They have a lot of infants. We teach them about it. And you see, if you put them possibly with a group or the parent, there's a family of a 40-year-old couple, you may have a tough time teaching on rearing a teenager and an infant at the same time. I can specialize with my age bracket as we're growing old together. Brother Hyles says when something loses its uniqueness, it loses some of its right to grow. I thought it would be harder reaching people in this age bracket, and he gave me all these qualifications. I thought it would be hard. It was a little bit tough at first, but it paid off in the end because everybody said, I'll join that. They're exactly like me. And so it was almost an attraction. You say, well, who should teach this class? It could be the pastor. It could be a staff member, maybe an assistant pastor. It could be a very sharp layman. But whoever it is, if it's going to be a staff member or if it's going to be a layman in the church, there's one thing you're going to have to understand, that if you don't love your preacher and if you don't love the Lord, I wouldn't even take the class, because you're going to need to learn to be loyal. It could be awful easy for you to begin to think your preacher gives you an opportunity, and you begin to have some adults in the church, you might begin to think you're hot stuff. Well, I'm not hot stuff. I have a preacher that's hot stuff, and I have a Lord that's hot stuff, and if it weren't for Brother Hyles, I would not have the opportunity that I have. It is a privilege to get to be the Sunday school teacher of some adults in Jack Hyles' church, and that's what I am. I'm just a Sunday school teacher, and if it were not for the Lord and Brother Hyles, I wouldn't have a group of 235 people in my Sunday school class. He provided the building, he paid my salary, and I owe him a debt. And so you want to make sure that if you get this group of people, that you get the right attitude about it. Don't get to thinking you got it all together. Everything might fall apart on you. Matter of fact, if you get that attitude, I hope it does. You see, people in this age bracket seem to want to build. They've got an excitement about them. They want to build their young men. I've got men, probably every couple of months, another man saying, I'm going to build a business. They're excited about building. They're building reputations, and they're building their future security, and they're building their bank accounts, and they're building a new house, and they're building a family. Now, we don't use our people to build our work, but if we will teach the people the Bible, they'll turn around and live the Bible, and they'll end up helping us to build the work, because that excitement and that drive. And see, they're not teenagers anymore. They're young adults. They now have just enough sense to get something done in life. They're doing something now. They're excited. Hey, and they still have, they've not been beat up by the world enough to where they're saying, can't be done. No, they think it can. They believe God can. They believe their life is before them, and they're excited about it. This is the foundation of the church. This is the foundation of the world's largest Sunday school. This, reaching those people and getting them in the church so that we can run our buses and so we can support all those mission-type ministries. That's what it's all about. You see, by doing what I'm doing, we can put more buses on the road eventually. We'll reach more people. I told you earlier, 71 bus workers out of this group. Now, if you take the 10 bus captains, if they all bring 50 people each, that's a lot of people. We need these folks. Now, let me give you the names that we've used for some of our young married couples classes. My favorite is a sweetheart couples class. That's because that's my class. My second favorite is a sweetheart couples class. We've used the name, secondly, young couples. We just called it a young couples class. We've used the name the friendly couples class. We've used the name the together forever class. We have a class called the young at heart class. You could call it the home builders class. Or you could call it the building and battling class. Now, you say, Brother Owens, where are we going to find the prospects for our new couples class? Let me give you a few simple places, and I'll add to the list later on. First of all, an in-church census. Where to find prospects for a young couples class. An in-church census. Brother Hyles did this on a Wednesday night. This is what he did. When he came and he announced to our congregation that we were starting this new class for brand new people, he asked our congregation to take the time to write down the names and the addresses of every young couple that met the qualifications. And these were young couples not in our church. He asked the congregation then to turn those names into us. It was then the teacher's job to go out and follow up on all those, just like a soul winning call. And so we gathered all the names that we could. You would be amazed at how many people in your church know of young couples, but they don't think they'll fit into the church. But this brand new class specifically designed for young couples, suddenly somebody out there in the pew says, oh, I know somebody that would like that. Well, that somebody might have liked to have been in the church a year ago, but that person sitting in the pew never gave any thought to it. But now we're specializing. Number 2, house-to-house soul winning. I wish I could give you some technique that would be pretty and fancy like you'd like it to be, but there's no better way than the Bible way. The Bible teaches daily, and in every house they cease not to preach and teach Jesus Christ. So you say, Brother Owens, how'd you get most of yours? I can show you exactly how I got most of mine. Just like that. I just knocked on those doors. Door after door after door. By the way, most of the doors I knocked on, when I knocked on them, they stayed on the hinge. I knocked on doors. I went out into areas where there were houses. I went to some trailer courts, a lot of young couples in there, some apartment buildings. But I went into the houses here in Lake County, Indiana, and I took men with me, and I presented my couples class over and over and over again. If I met somebody that didn't qualify, we went ahead and tried to win them to Christ and bring them into the church and maybe put them in some other adult class, but I was out there beating the woods. I was trying to figure out a way to find couples, and there are plenty of prospects. Everybody says, I've had someone say to me, Brother Owens, I didn't get a prospect card. I told them all they have to do is look, there's a little number right above somebody's door, and all you have to do is go and knock on that door. That's your prospect. We haven't run out of prospect cards. They're rather large. It's a house. Just go find a house and knock on the door on that house. And usually people live in houses behind doors in the house. No better way than God's way. Thirdly, another way that we got some prospects is that we went to the marriage announcements in the local newspaper. Marriage announcements in the local newspaper. Somebody would print the fact that they had been married, a little picture. We would write the name down, we'd research it, find the address. The minute I found the address, me or someone in my class, and I started out, I had to do it all. But we would go and visit them. I would send a letter of congratulations from the church. I never met those people before in my life. I just wrote a real nice letter, congratulated them on being married. I followed that letter up with a visit. I knocked on the door. The very first thing that I said when they came to the door, I said, my name is Jeff Owens. I'm the teacher of the Sweetheart Couples class, and I have a gift for you. It was wrapped in wedding shower type paper. It was a copy of Brother Hyles' book called Marriage is a Commitment. I handed it to him. I said, this is a gift from our church. We know you recently got married. We just want to give you a little something. It's pretty tough for somebody that just received a gift to slam the door in your face. Not long till I unwrapped another gift. Gift of eternal life. Then we try to bring him into the church. We also, another way, and this worked well, we watched in our local newspaper, and they had birth announcements. We figured anybody having a baby might be in our age bracket. And so, when the birth announcement was put in the paper, again, we researched, we found out the name and the address of the young couple that's had the baby. We go by their house. We send a letter of congratulations and talk to them about the responsibility of having a baby and how we know that they want their baby to grow up and to be a good American and be successful, and that we have a couples class that specializes on those things at our church. Again, we follow it up with we knock on that door. They come to the door, and the first thing I do is I shove a gift in their hand wrapped in baby shower type wrapping. It is a copy of Brother Hyles' book called How to Rear Infants. I say, I have a gift for you. I hand them that. They look at it, and before long, we try to unwrap another gift, and we try to get them saved, and we try to get them to our church. All the time that I'm at these prospective couples' homes, I'm presenting the gospel, and I'm trying to win them over, trying to get them to come visit that couples class. We specialize in marriage. We specialize in helping you to learn to rear your kids. We have counseling available at the church, all those many things. Now, I'll tell you, we got to be careful. If we don't start trying to reach these kind of people, all the healers, feelers, and squealers out there and all them community churches going to get them all, and they don't have right to them all. We've got the gospel. We shouldn't be letting James Dobson and Hocus Pocus on the Family and all them do all this teaching. We ought to be doing that. Another thing that helped us in the building of our class where I got some of these prospects was after a man or two had joined my class, we talked about having some meetings at their place of employment. I'll call them factory lunch hour meetings. A man had established a decent reputation at a place where he worked, and then he would have a one-night Bible study at a lunch break for the other men. And then we would begin to use that to present the fact that we had a class to help those men with their families. And many times I was invited, and they set it up with the management. They did it all just right, and then they would invite me to come in, and I would go, and I would maybe preach the gospel. Many times I'd go in and take, 10 minutes and just teach on being a successful worker. The management liked that. When I said a Christian ought to be the hardest worker in the place, the management enjoyed that. Then I taught them about how to be saved, and we would present our couples class. There's a man on our deacon board today that was one as a part of a factory lunch hour meeting. Now he has grown in the Lord and is now serving Brother Hyles as a deacon here at our church. Now, let me tell you what occurs when we finally get these couples to come to Sunday school. Let me tell you what happens to a first-time visitor to the Sweetheart Couples class. There's about 10 things that we do. Now, let me clarify, this is a Sunday school class. Sometimes I wonder if Sunday school teachers take their jobs seriously enough. This is a Sunday school class. I'm teaching the Bible. This is big stuff to me. I love my Sunday school class. I've got to succeed because I'm to teach the Bible. I'm to help the people. So I take a Sunday school class very, very seriously. And you say, well, Brother Owens, I'd take my Sunday school class seriously if I had 235 adults. I took it seriously when I had 18. That's how I got the 235. Let me tell you what happens when a first-time visiting couple comes to the Sweetheart Couples class. Number one, that week they'll receive a typed letter from me, the teacher, thanking them for coming and inviting them to come back. Now, to some of you, it would be obvious that maybe the pastor of the church would send a thank you letter to someone that was brand new in the church. Now, I'm talking about the Sunday school teacher. I put a letter in the mail to them thanking them for coming. Number two, they do receive a letter from Brother Hyles thanking them for coming to the church because, again, these are brand new people in the church. They're visiting the church service as well. They came to my Sunday school class and received a letter from the Sunday school teacher. They're coming to the church and receive a letter from the pastor for coming. The third thing, they receive a handwritten letter from a couple in my Sunday school class. This happens every week. 52 weeks out of the year for 7 years this has happened. I have some couples in my class, and this handwritten letter, it's on purpose. It's handwritten on purpose. Because this is from a couple where the husband is a blue-collar worker. Might be a construction worker, might be a plumber, might be a truck driver. That couple gets the name and address of this brand new couple, and they write a letter. The letter would sound something like this. Dear Joe and Sue, thank you for visiting the Sweetheart Couples class. We've been going to the class now for 2 or 3 years. My husband is a plumber. My wife and I, we have 3 children, and we love our Sunday school class. We're so glad that you came. We hope to see you back next week, and maybe you'd sit with us in Sunday school, and they sign off. Then we will have another letter sent to this visiting couple. So far I send one, the Sunday school teacher. Brother Hyles sends one, the pastor. A blue-collar worker and his wife send one. Then I have professional people in my Sunday school class. They send a letter. That letter is a typed letter. Many times it's on their business stationery or letterhead. So they are greeted and told that they're wanted in our Sunday school class. They need to know that somebody other than the teacher or the preacher wants them in Sunday school. Those are some ideas about what we do for them their very first visit with us.
Let me tell you what we're trying to do this week. We're doing exactly what I said I do in our church sometimes. If I feel like the bus ministry is a little down, we'll stress it for a big push. If I feel like it's a little up, we'll stress the drive-in crowd, the big push. And in the fundamental circles, I feel like now then that the drive-in crowd needs to have some emphasis. And that's what we're doing for this week. And of course mainly to reach the couples because we're interested in fulfilling our theme of marriage.